What's going on, YouTube fam? It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. It's free. It helps get the video out there. Definitely watch this video to the end to hear the full story and all the details in the case. For my day one fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you're feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. With that being said, let's get right into the story. Most inner cities in America are filled with everyday people just trying to survive. A lot of working class men and women trying to raise their families and trying to live a safe and productive life. But unfortunately, in America, inner cities also have an underworld. Whether it's due to poverty, people not having a lot of opportunities, lack of resources, or just a way of life. For some individuals, all they know is what they see at home and what goes on in their community. Perfect example, you can have two friends growing up on the same block in the same neighborhood. One of them, mother and father, are both at home. They go to work every day. They make sure they keep him busy so he won't be too exposed to the things that happen in the area. While he definitely could still take the wrong path, his support system is set up for him to succeed. On the other hand, his homie might got a mother that's getting high, his father in prison, he got siblings he got to help look after, and he leans more towards the streets and the environment for support. For a lot of inner city youth, they can't help where they are born at, what they see coming up, and what they have to adapt to. If all you see around your way is hustlers and you don't have any guidance at home, more than likely you will start hustling yourself. Same if you grow up around shooters. And a sad reality in every city I ever lived in is the mindset of picking up a gun to solve a problem is embedded in the culture of all of them. And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we'll be discussing the case of an ambush on a Baltimore block that shocked the whole community. Back in 2018, 22-year-old Sadique Griffin, nicknamed Deke by family and friends, was a young man navigating life in Baltimore. The young man grew up playing sports, had a strong family support system, and he was described as fun-loving with an excitement for life. He loved teaching himself and learning new things. A hip-hop head, his favorite rapper was Lil Boosie, who he listened to on a daily basis. Close with his family, especially his mother, Sadique, like many of us when we were that age, was just trying to figure out life and the best way to move out here. He was living in Northeast Baltimore at the time, in the Bel Air Road part of the city, close to Emily Avenue. Another young man stayed in the same area. He was 23-year-old Gilbert Gardner. Gilbert also grew up playing sports, had a decent upbringing, but like many of us, when you are young and impressionable, he got caught up in the streets at a young age. He would find himself in some serious trouble, but fortunately, he was able to get out that jam and was given a second chance. But in the area, it was smoke in the air between the two young men. For whatever reasons, they didn't see eye to eye, and a few words were exchanged. Both living in the same area, just blocks away from each other, they knew a lot of the same people, and everybody knew the two men really wasn't feeling each other. On a cold winter day, February 13th, 2018, Gilbert was out riding. He was sliding through the neighborhood with another young man, who we will call Ghost for the sake of the story. They pulled up to a house on Chesterfield Avenue when Gilbert hopped out the driver's seat of the car to greet another man. As the two chopped it up, he allegedly got a phone call that Sadique was outside in the 3800 block of Emily Avenue. He jumped back in the whip and sped off. As Sadique was bopping by a nearby store, a shooter popped out the cut and multiple shots went off. Then they took off through the alleyway on feet. Witnesses and neighbors called BPD, who responded to the scene to find Sadique suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. He was rushed to a local hospital, but unfortunately, he wouldn't survive his injuries. The homicide shocked the community. With a lot of working class people, homeowners in the area, it wasn't always quiet and things happened around there as it was still Baltimore, but at that time, the city was doing good with a 12-day streak of no homicides. But unfortunately, the shooting will break that. Neighbors who were in their home at the time told police what they saw. One woman stated she was doing dishes in her kitchen when she claimed to see a car pull up in the alley. A man get out, walk through the cut. Seconds later, over 5 shots went off. She saw the shooter run back to the car and the driver opened the passenger side door. Then they sped off. After that, she ran and opened her front door and saw a young man laying in the street. Another neighbor had cameras on his home and caught the whole situation. He willingly gave the footage to police. But the big piece to the case was a man who claimed he saw the getaway car on his block on Chesterfield just a few minutes earlier, and the driver was talking to one of his neighbors, who we will call D, before driving off fast. Then 3 minutes later, he claimed shots went off in the area. Police brought D in for questioning. At first, he denied speaking to anybody, but then he broke down and told police his homie Gil pulled up on him. He stated he then got a call Deke was outside, then Gil left. When asked who Gil was, he stated Gilbert. Police already familiar with the young man got a search warrant for his home, located in the 3700 block of Lindale Avenue. Inside, they found 5 handguns and drugs, and Gilbert was taken into custody. At first, only charged with that, until homicide detectives pieced together the video footage from that area the day of the hit. They were able to identify Gilbert as the driver, but not the shooter. They pressed the young man about the evidence they had on him, but he refused to talk and name his passenger, who was the alleged trigger man. But with that, he was hit with first-degree hit and conspiracy to commit a hit, along with the other charges he was already facing. As the case made its way to trial, prosecutors stated even though they knew Gilbert wasn't the shooter, they knew for a fact he was the driver, and they felt he should be held just as responsible. It was multiple witnesses from the neighborhood that took the stand and stated what they witnessed that day. Also, D, Gilbert's homie, came to court to testify. He stated Gil pulled up on him. When he was asked if he saw who he was talking about in the courtroom and was he the driver of the getaway car, he hesitated before stating yes and pointing to Gilbert. With all that, it was nothing his attorney could do. He was found guilty on all charges. It's not clear how much time he received, but he is currently serving his sentence up WCI. He appealed his conviction, stating it was all hearsay and he wasn't the shooter. But under Maryland law, if you are a participant in any way to a crime, even though you're not the shooter, you can be held just as responsible. So he lost the appeal and is now still currently serving his time in state custody. Rest in peace to Sadique. I send my prayers and condolences to his family. I'm not sure why the 2 young men were beefing, but I do know it doesn't take much at that age with ego to make an enemy, and they only lived a few blocks away from each other. Unfortunately, the sad cycle in most inner cities, you try me, or if I don't like you, it's no talking, guns coming out, leaving the youth gone before they get a chance to live. At 22 years old, you are still trying to see what direction you are going out here, and to lose your life over something 9 times out of 10 wasn't worth it is terrible. And another young man sitting in a cell. They keep getting us in the same trap. They call it 2 for 1. 2 lives gone in the same situation. One to the graveyard and another to the cell. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this situation. Leave it in the comments. Yeah, man, crazy story. Rest in peace, that young man. I definitely send my prayers to his family. But I ain't gonna talk too much more about this one. Y'all tap that like button if you're feeling the content. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. This is another episode of the Baltimore Way. It's your boy Tony 2 times. Love, fam. I'm out. What's going on, YouTube, fam? It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. Definitely watch this video to the end so you can hear the full story and all the details in the case. For my day one fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. With that being said, let's get right into the story. One thing we all should know by now is living in this world, you will be tested. There's all kinds of trials and tribulations to go through, hurdles to jump, for most on a daily basis. And I learned, the more you try to do right, the more things will come your way. Not to get spiritual, but for us that believe in a higher power, we understand it's a fight going on between good and evil. And the devil is always working. He could be working through a coworker who was just cool a day ago, but you peep the next day is now trying to trick you out your position, coming at you crazy at work. Or a family member that one day just comes at you on some weird type of energy. It gets deep. For most, we try to stay grounded and 10 steps ahead of the tricks and evils of the world and people. But it's really no way possible because we live amongst it. Quick story time. I remember back in like 2010, I was 23 years old, out Baltimore County by my people's house in Fontana Village, Rosedale. I was on parole and probation, backing up 15 years, trying to watch how I move, work on myself as a man, and watch my temper. I was at a red light. My wife was with me. She was just my girlfriend at the time, and my daughter. I glanced over, and another dude was gritting on me hard. I had a moment, fresh out of prison, with a mindset like, what is yo looking at? He cracked slick. He asked me, you know me? I said, no, I thought you knew me. He said, I can pull over and we can get to know each other. At this point, I'm plotting. I evaluated the situation. His girl was in the car and his baby. I was about to make a call right across the street to my peoples and tell yo, like, yeah, follow me over here. We can get to know each other. And tell them, like, we got one. We about to terrorize yo. But I told myself, that's nothing but the devil. Long story short, I felt like a swine, a sucker. But I knew at that point I was maturing into a man. And I had to think about the tricks in that situation and think for me and him. Unfortunately, a lot of times, things don't play out like that though. And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we'll be taking it all the way back to 2013 to discuss the case of a Baltimore man who never made it home from work after a run-in with evil. Back in 2013, 20-year-old Anthony Black was a young man trying to navigate life in Baltimore. Young and full of life, he liked to have fun from time to time. But for the most part, Anthony was focused, trying to make something of himself and make the right decisions in life. Even at just 20, Anthony was in a committed relationship. The young man was even ready to jump the broom. Him and his fiance, who we'll call Stephanie for the sake of the story, lived together, had a nice apartment, and both worked hard. Anthony wasn't no street dude at all, no sucker either. He was just himself. He preferred to hang out with his fiance or close friends, go on double dates when he had free time and wasn't at work. The young man worked down the harbor at the Cheesecake Factory on Pratt Street while figuring out what he wanted to go back to school for. Things were looking bright for the young man. On April 6, 2013, Anthony headed to work. It was a normal day. Stephanie dropped him off and was coming back later to pick him up. He worked his shift, which was at night. Stephanie drove down to pick him up around about 1:30 a.m. Downtown at the time were two men, Matthew Derby and Derek Schuler, both 24 years old. The two friends had been out drinking. That's when they saw Stephanie parked up waiting for Anthony. A pretty girl, she quickly caught Matthew's attention. Under the influence, he told Derek to come on. That's when they boldly approached the car. As Matthew tried to rap to Stephanie, she told the man she had a fiance. In fact, he was leaving work and on his way to the car, and she was there to pick him up. In the mix of her turning the two men down, Anthony walked out the restaurant. Noticing two men talking to his fiance, He asked, like, what's up? That's when Matthew stated, nothing much, bro. Your girlfriend is hot. Peeping the vibes, Anthony, knowing they had both been drinking, said, all right, bro, I appreciate that. Now go ahead and leave. But Matthew was looking for a fight. He wouldn't budge and started being disrespectful, talking to Stephanie, saying what he would do to her sexually, causing Anthony to approach him, telling him again, like, bro, bop off. Even Matthew's homie Derek saw it wasn't funny no more and said, yeah, bro, let's go. But seconds later, Matthew swung on Anthony. Defending himself, he fought back, but then he fell to the ground and the two friends ran. Stephanie jumped out the car, realizing Anthony had been stabbed. Even though it was 2 a.m., there was multiple witnesses downtown who called BPD. They found Anthony suffering from cut wounds all over his upper body. He was rushed to a local hospital, but unfortunately, he wouldn't survive his injuries. Stephanie, hurt and in shock, told police it was a normal night. She came to pick Anthony up from work like any other night, but two men approached her and just kept antagonizing the couple. Surveillance footage from the area caught some of the incident, and police were able to track the suspect's steps back to the location where they first started drinking at and get video and images. They ran them through a database. They realized one of the men had a criminal record, and they came back with a name. It was Matthew. They realized the man was from Glen Burnie. Police were able to track him down just hours later, and he was picked out of a lineup by witnesses who saw the whole incident. They all stated that was the man who stabbed Anthony. He was taken into custody, at first charged with first-degree hit. A few days later, Derek was also picked up. As Anthony's family and fiance were left to grieve, everyone stated he was a hard-working, cool young man who didn't have any enemies or bother no one. He was working at the restaurant to save up money for college. As the case made its way to court, somehow Matthews and Derek's attorneys were able to get the charges dropped to manslaughter and assault with a deadly weapon. Matthew was found guilty, and being the one who stabbed Anthony, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Derek, because he was the one who tried to de-escalate the situation, only got 5 years, were all suspended for 6 days to serve in jail. Anthony's family felt the sentencing wasn't fair. They filed the $5 million wrongful death lawsuit, but I'm not sure how that played out for him. But rest in peace to Anthony. I send my prayers and condolences to his family. 20 years old. He didn't go out looking for no trouble. It literally found him. That just goes to show you, just like we was talking about how evil works. Whatever spirit that was operating in Matthew that night wouldn't leave the situation alone. He wanted it to go just the way it did. We know if this story was reversed, Anthony would probably still be in prison. But us that understand the system knows how that go. I wanted to shed light on this story and give Anthony a voice, because to be honest, until somebody brought this to my attention, I never heard of this story. But like we was talking about earlier, there's some people out here that go around looking for trouble. Whatever demons they have in them come out, and they are not satisfied until a situation plays out like this. Matthew could have easily said, you got a boyfriend, my fault, you beautiful, and walked off. I'm sure there was plenty other women downtown drinking that night on his same type of vibe, but instead he took a young man's life for nothing. He has to live with that for the rest of his life. But I want to know y'all thoughts on this situation, and how do you yourself deal with situations like this? Do you try to walk away, or are you the type that go all in and whatever happens, happens? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, man, crazy story. Messed up situation. Rest in peace, that young man. I definitely send my prayers to his family.
It's your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 times, and I'm back with another episode of the Baltimore Way. In this video, I'll be discussing how a fun night out on a Baltimore block ended fatally. But before we get into this video, please hit that like button. Also, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already and join the Tony 2 times family. Tap the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And of course, feel free to share this video with everyone you know. All right, let's get into it. Jasmine Samuel was a Baltimore native, born and raised in the city. She was a true daughter of Baltimore, a woman who had spent her entire life navigating the vibrant, complex heartbeat of this city. Jasmine was shaped by its streets, its people, and its culture. Those who knew Jasmine described her as expressive, lively, and unapologetically herself. She was someone who could command attention simply by being present. But most importantly, Jasmine was a mother. At 33 years old, she had an entire lifetime of memories left to make with her children. Memories that were stolen on a warm September night in the city she called home. But to understand how Jasmine's story reached its tragic conclusion, we have to look at the woman who stood next to her on the 2700 block of Pennsylvania Avenue that night, Teresa Collins. At 38 years old, Teresa was a familiar face along Pennsylvania Avenue, a stretch of the city known for foot traffic, corner stores, and a constant flow of people coming and going. Teresa was recognizable. She was known for her distinctive appearance, her bold, unmistakable style. She was often seen sporting vibrant, colorful wigs and eclectic outfits. But beneath Teresa's surface-level, eccentric personality was a woman with a history that would eventually collide with Jasmine in the most permanent way imaginable. On this particular September night, Teresa's visibility would later become a central focus of a homicide investigation. But at the time, she was just another person on the block until everything shifted. The date was September 22nd, 2024. It was a Sunday evening, just after 9 p.m. The 2700 block of Pennsylvania Avenue was buzzing with its usual energy. Outside a nearby liquor store stood a crowd of people enjoying the night. Conversations, music, and movement filled the street. Surveillance cameras in the area captured the scene. Jasmine Samuel was there, caught on video dancing, seemingly enjoying the rhythm of the night. In the same frame, Teresa Collins was standing next to Jasmine as she danced. Teresa was impossible to miss, wearing a bright blue wig, a denim jacket over a striped bikini top, and an Adidas fanny pack strapped to her waist. For a few moments, they were just two people in the same space, but the atmosphere shifted rapidly. Investigators later revealed that an altercation broke out between the two women. While the exact words exchanged remain lost to the wind, the tension was visible on the surveillance footage. Teresa was allegedly seen adjusting an object in her possession. Tensions escalated to a point of no return when Teresa was allegedly seen removing the object from her fanny pack, an object that would change everything. As the disagreement reached its peak, Jasmine turned around and walked away. She was retreating, trying to put distance between herself and the conflict, but Teresa didn't let the moment end there. While Jasmine's back was turned, Teresa reportedly leveled a firearm and fired. Chaos erupted. At approximately 9:06 p.m., Western District officers received a ShotSpotter alert. When BPD officers arrived, they found Jasmine on the pavement, suffering from a catastrophic wound. Despite the desperate life-saving measures performed by officers and the paramedics who rushed her to a nearby hospital, Jasmine's life reached its end that night. Homicide detectives took over the investigation almost immediately. The scene was secured. Evidence was documented. Cartridge casings were located, and surveillance footage was obtained. The investigation moved quickly. Within days, a departmental flyer was circulated with a description of the suspect in a blue wig. Metro Crime Stoppers issued an $8,000 reward for information leading to charges and an arrest. It didn't take long for a Baltimore police officer to recognize the woman on the flyer as Tessa, a person he had known since childhood. On September 26, only 4 days after the incident, detectives descended on a rooming house. There, they found Teresa Collins. During a search, they also found evidence. A search of her room uncovered a bag containing that distinctive bright blue wig, striped bikini top, the fanny pack, and a loaded firearm. Surveillance cameras in the area became critical pieces of the puzzle. While the footage does not capture the actual shooting, it does show Teresa pointing a firearm in the direction of Jasmine and others nearby. Another camera angle shows Jasmine fleeing, wounded, as the woman with the bright blue hair followed her briefly around a corner, out of view. Moments later, Teresa reappears on camera and appears to place the weapon back into her bag. The evidence was overwhelming. Teresa was taken to the Central Booking Intake Facility and held without bail. By the time February 2025 rolled around, the legal battle began. The prosecution offered Teresa a plea deal, 25 years behind bars, with the first 5 years without eligibility for parole. In a move that surprised some in the courtroom, Teresa rejected the offer, choosing instead to take her chances with a jury. Her defense later stated that Teresa had not been made aware of the offer prior to the hearing. If convicted, she faced the possibility of a life sentence. Teresa's trial was initially scheduled for July 23, 2025, but was postponed due to a change in defense counsel. The trial was rescheduled for November 17, 2025, later beginning on November 18th in Baltimore City Circuit Court. During opening statements, prosecutors presented surveillance footage, phone data, and physical evidence tying Teresa to the scene. Teresa's new attorney argued that the evidence was purely circumstantial. They pointed out that while the video showed the before and after, it didn't capture the exact moment the trigger was pulled. However, the prosecution brought a mountain of evidence that was hard to ignore. They didn't just have the video, they had cell site data. The collected data placed Teresa's phone at the exact location at 9:04 p.m. Even more damaging were recorded jail calls where Teresa was heard saying that someone had to have told on her and mentioning that they even got the joint, a term used for the weapon. The defense maintained that the case was entirely circumstantial. They also criticized investigators were not interviewing bystanders or collecting additional surveillance footage. They urged jurors not to speculate, but prosecutors maintained the evidence told a clear and consistent story. The jury didn't need long. On November 20th, after only a few hours of deliberation, the verdict came back. Guilty on all counts, including first-degree counts and firearm charges. Teresa Collins now awaits sentencing. May Jasmine Samuel continue to rest in peace. My condolences to her family. I send them my well wishes. This case is a reminder of how quickly everyday moments can turn into something irreversible. Jasmine's life was more than just headlines. She was a daughter, a mother, and a woman whose story deserves to be remembered beyond the circumstances that ended it. And a woman who chose to settle a dispute with a weapon now faces the possibility of spending the rest of her life behind a different set of walls. Jasmine Samuel walked away from the fight, but she couldn't walk away from the consequences of someone else's choice. Fam, I'm going to leave the rest up to you. What are your thoughts on this story? Let me know in the comments. All right, fam, that's it for this episode of the Baltimore Way. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative and believe these stories matter, please consider liking this video so more people can see it. Subscribe for more stories like this that deserve to be heard. And most importantly, take care of yourself and those around you. This is your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 Times. Until next time.
What's going on, YouTube, fam? It's your boy Tony 2 Times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. Definitely watch this video to the end to hear the full story and all the details in the case. For my day one fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. With that being said, let's get right into the story. As you get older, most people start to realize one of the main goals in life is to grow and elevate. No matter what you choose to do, you want to get better at it as time goes on. And no matter how you think, you want to make sure as you get older, your way of thinking evolves. For example, if you work at McDonald's, for most individuals, they're not trying to be a fry cook forever. Even if they choose that as a forever job, eventually you want to level up and at least be shift leader or manager. But change is scary and growth is very uncomfortable, especially if you spend years identifying with something. What I mean by that is, say you are from a certain environment and you are a street person. Around your way, you are that guy or girl. You go out here, get jammed up, now you have to go do some time. While in prison, you get a trade. You come home, get a good job. For some, it's hard to let go of what they once was, despite the opportunity right in front of them for a new life and a fresh start. You feel like if you stop going around the way or stop being in the mix, I can't be considered street no more. And now I'm a clown or goofy for trying to do right. I know because I'm speaking from experience. When you're so used to being one way and you take another path that goes against everything you have been taught or you feel weird, maybe even fake. Instead of realizing the streets only brought you pain, prison, and loss, now you go do something legit, like be an engineer, which one would think you would rather identify with that than being a street dude. That's an easy choice, right? But unfortunately, the mindset, places, and people we choose to gravitate to can stop that growth. And who you choose to identify as can limit that elevation. And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we'll be discussing the case of some friends' plans to hit a fast lick in the Baltimore streets that backfired. Back in 2021, 28-year-old London O's was trying her best to navigate life in Baltimore. London had some trouble in the past. She had a felony and had been locked up for a few years. By this time, she was back home, adapting back to life. She came from a good cloth though. Her father was a big pastor with over 1 million friends on Facebook and a leader of a church. Now back home with a strong support system, London was trying to do right. She took classes to get a job, in which eventually she landed a decent gig. All she had to do was keep grinding, growing, never forget where she came from, but look forward and focus on the future. But as we all know, if you are not careful, old habits and old ways can pop back up real fast. And London, like most of us, liked fast money. She had a home girl, a young lady, at the time, 25-year-old Brandy Barrows. The two were close. They often hung out and rotated in the same circles. Brandy also had a record as well and had recently came home. Both women were at the crossroads in their life. Either choose to go straight out here, stay out the way, and get some legit money, or get back in the mix. London often posts on Facebook about the temptations of the streets and the life she was used to, even stating, if you don't learn from your mistakes, the devil will. Meaning, if you are not careful, the devil will use the same tricks every time to try to get you by knowing your weaknesses. But despite being aware of that, on a hot summer day, In Baltimore, June 18th, 2021, Brandy and London were together that day, chopping it up. When they thought to themselves, they needed some money. The plan was they hit a quick lick, and they knew a local trapper who they felt they could take off. At the time, 24-year-old Tyrell Woods. But the young ladies felt they needed backup and allegedly called two associates, 25-year-old Devin Palin and a juvenile 17-year-old Freedom Brown. They told the two men they wanted to make a move and they were coming to pick them up, and which they did. Now all together, they talked about the lick, which was supposed to be an easy one. The two women who both knew Tyrell would call him, tell him they wanted to cop something, and the men would walk up and rob him. When they called Tyrell, he said he was in motion, out catching sales. They asked could they meet him. Comfortable with the two women, he stated bet, not knowing it was a threat against him. They told him to come to the 3800 block of Derby Manor Drive in West Baltimore. The group arrived first, and the two men got out of the car. To make it seem it was just Brandy and London who pulled up. Tyrell pulled up, and the car with him was his girlfriend. He got out to talk to the two young ladies, who he thought was his homegirls, asking what they needed. Seconds later, two men came from the woods, hopped the guardrail, and multiple shots went off, hitting Tyrell. As London went through his pockets, his girlfriend yelled out, and the four ran back to the car and fled the scene. BPD was called to the location to find Tyrell suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. He was rushed to a local hospital, but unfortunately, he wouldn't survive his injuries. His girlfriend told police he was set up. It was supposed to be a drug deal, but ended in a robbery and shooting. She knew the woman involved and gave names. A search of Tyrell's phone also gave police suspects as well. Not to mention, it was cameras on the block that caught some of the incident. Already in the system for being convicted felons, police ran Brandy's and London's name and put out a warrant for their arrest. A few weeks later, Brandy was picked up. In her possession was an unregistered firearm. She was taken into custody, charged with first-degree hit and also handgun violations. London was arrested shortly after, also Devon, but Freedom would be clear at first. All three were charged with first-degree hit. Devon never admitted to being involved in the situation, but as the two women were awaiting trial, both Brandy and London admitted to setting up the robbery, claiming they didn't know the men would shoot Tyrell. It was supposed to be an easy lick. Now with the men being pointed to as the shooters, a hunt was on for Freedom, who was 17 years old at the time. Crazy enough, he would get jammed up in a homicide case in Towson while at work in February of 2023, where he was pointed to as the trigger man who took a young man's life after an argument. Freedom was taking out the trash at work when words were exchanged between the two and shots went off. Co-workers told county police he was the shooter. If you want to check out the story, we covered it on the channel. You can go to the playlist or hit the up next card after this video. As the case made its way to court, both of the women rejected offers by the state, but did get plea deals in exchange for their testimony. Even though Devin and Freedom were being pointed to as the trigger men, they never put themselves on the scene. Tyrell's girlfriend never identified them as well. There was no evidence on the scene, and it was the women's words against theirs. Ironically, both Freedom and Devon were acquitted, even though Freedom now faces another hit case in Towson. Brandy was found guilty on first-degree hit and handgun violations. She was sentenced to life all suspended for 20 years, on top of another 15 years for illegal possession of a handgun. It's not clear whether the sentences will run together or separate. London was also found guilty on first-degree hit and also sentenced to life all suspended for 20 years in prison. Rest in peace to Tyrell. I send my prayers and condolences to his family. It seems London and Brandy were both at a crossroad in their lives. Either look forward, leave the past in the past, or revert back to old ways, as they both had prior convictions for similar charges. But like I was talking about earlier, some people are scared to let go and grow. They feel like if they stop identifying with being from the trenches, being in the mix, that makes them weak. and they don't know who they are no more. To see London already know the devil was trying to trick her off the streets and still fall into the trap reminds me how easy it is to slip up and go backwards. Sometimes we are given a second chance just to see exactly what we will do with it, or if we were serious about changing in the first place. Unfortunately, a lot of people fail. But I want to leave this one open for discussion. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts about the situation in the comments. Yeah, man, crazy story. Rest in peace, that young man. I definitely send my prayers to his family. But I ain't gonna talk too much more about this one. Y'all leave it in the comments. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. That's another episode of the Baltimore Way. It's your boy Tony 2 times. Love, fam. I'm out.